So I now want to introduce Kim Fraczek, who is the co-director of the Sane Energy Project. Kim has a background in both corporate, creative direction and in social justice. Kim continues to spearhead the imaginative strategy side of campaigns, which she helped found with Occupy the Pipeline and the Sane Energy Project. And she really helps direct movements towards the goals with community and joy. And I can say from working directly with her that is absolutely true. She's committed to using art as a tool for social engagement and has brought a wise and considerate hand to all of our ongoing campaigns. We're so grateful to have Kim here tonight and to be working with her and have her here in our state fighting the good fight. Thank you, Kim. You are.
So this is about energy democracy. So I just wanted to open a little bit about what energy democracy is. I know that I feel like this phrase has been thrown around a lot, and a lot of people are like, wait, what is this? And we have to be careful of like things becoming catchphrases without really truly absorbing the meaning of it. So it is about community residents being innovators and planners and decision makers in their futures, being able to choose clean energy, being a part of the process. So just to show you what we have now, like who chooses this? Who actually chooses to live next to power plants and get asthma and have their children grow up in poisonous situations? We don't have choice now, so we need to create that and push for it, and I definitely see the movement moving in that direction. So this is what the natural gas industry looks like. This is a picture of a local resident, Nancy Van, who we have here tonight.
True hero.
And this is her property that Spectra Energy took by eminent domain to build the Algonquin Incremental Market Pipeline. This picture, when I saw it, it was chilling, and it really describes exactly what's happening. Her house is just behind those trees. She didn't choose this. And this is the problem with our energy system. Energy equals power, and we don't have the power right now, so we need to figure out the way to shift power to the people. So this is what resistance is looking like. We have the Utah tar sands fighters. We have, Resist Sane. We have lots of people fighting, putting up blockades to say no to the projects. We're actually in the stage of physically trying to shut down the pipeline construction after being shut down by many administrative processes. So Sane Energy Project and a whole group of grassroots groups around New York State all got together in a basement church in Roscoe, New York one time, and we thought, let's tell each other what's going on in our neighborhood so we can all connect. And we did, and we put together these like long PowerPoints, and this is what's going on in New York City, and this is what's going on in Binghamton, and this is what's going on in Oneida. And we decided the best choice would be to make a map of what's going on so we can all see a big picture of what's happening with all the fracking infrastructure in New York State. We're currently working to expand that map into Pennsylvania, but we just want to run through New York State tonight, and then I'll open it up to the region and sort of what's going on in the 50 states. So just let's take it back a step and just remember that methane is not cleaner for the climate, for us. It's poisonous. We just have to remember that moving forward. That is actually 86% times worse for the climate than carbon dioxide. So we have to always push that catchphrase that they're putting, we have to reduce our carbon. We have to remember that we all have to talk about all greenhouse gases and include methane in that. A lot of the pipelines that are getting built, we have to remember that every single new pipeline has compressor stations every 30 to 50 miles. These compressor stations are where they put the gas in the pipeline and compress it and push it down to the next compressor station down the pipeline. And this is what a compressor station looks like up on the top left. And this is what the compressor station right under it looks like under a floor camera. So there is actual emissions just spewing out over neighborhoods over and over, and people are getting sick. And there's a town that we got really close with in Mini Sink, New York, who went to Senator Gillibrand's office to plead with them, say, mothers and families are really suffering. We're living directly across the street from this. And she never even sent an aide down to meet with them and accept a letter and a whole bunch of information that they had to give her. So people feel really ignored, and they don't feel part of the democracy. They don't feel a part of the system, and choices are being made that are really injuring us, and we really have to do something about this. This is what Minisync did after Gillibrand ignored them, the state ignored them, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission ignored them. They marched in the streets, and they were one of the early fighters trying to explain what a compressor station was. It was a really unsexy battle to try to explain to people, come and fight this compressor station with us. But now that we have that more in our common language, we're able to actually understand what compressor stations are, and people are facing them all over the place because the pipelines are just taking off and compressor stations are happening everywhere. We're learning from Minisync. We're able to learn from that. But unfortunately, Minisync New York, 10 families have had to move out of this community, and you see that this is a rural farming community. This is called the Black Dirt region. National Geographic covered this region for its rich soil. This is where a lot of our garlic and onions come from, and it's a beautiful place, but it's destroyed because industrialization came to town against the will of the people. This woman, Asha, who's in the front of the march, she was one of the people that left Minisync, and now she lives in New Mexico, and she's facing more battles there. So additionally, pipelines are not only going to have new compressor stations, they're also going to have new power plants. So a couple of the folks that we work with that are fighting these power plants in New York State, we've all sort of figured out what the angle is of these power plants. A lot of people have been saying that the gas industry's agenda is to liquefy this gas and ship it overseas really quick to make a foreign profit, which is 6 to 10 times more. But it's they are also building these power plants. And if you think that what you saw coming out of that compressor station was bad, wait till you see what's coming out of the power plants. They're building that right in the middle of our farmland, right in the middle of residential communities. And what we're trying to sort of break down is that they're building these power plants, and they're actually pushing the cost of construction onto the ratepayers. So people are actually paying to build this infrastructure that they don't even want because they don't have a choice in how their energy system is running. Additionally, when they do figure out that they want to build all these liquefied natural gas ports on our coast, which I'll get to in a second, they will then be able to raise the global market price, which is 6 to 10 times more in Europe and Asia, and we'll be locked into this infrastructure here. So they'll be like, well, we can't develop solar. We have all this gas infrastructure that we spent all this money on. So if we don't shut all this stuff down now, we're really seeing a future of incredible poison and real hardship. This is the group called Protect Orange County that is actually building a civil disobedience campaign against the CPV power plant. This is a mother and a grandmother, Pramila Malik, who has been an amazing fighter in this battle against the Minisync compressor station and the CPV power plant. She's shouting from the rooftops for people to pay attention to these power plants because we're going to start seeing more of them, and explaining why they're bad. And they've also gotten a movie star that lives up in Orange County, James Cromwell, who's been an amazing source of attention for this group and for the whole movement. He really gets the grassroots, and he really understands it. So we want to just take you on a little journey through New York State and to the Finger Lakes and how the gas industry is seeing the Finger Lakes. They're seeing this as a place to store their gas. They're seeing it as a place to store the silica sand and the chemicals and withdraw water because it's so close to the Pennsylvania border where they're doing the actual drilling. There's a civil disobedience campaign there called We Are Seneca Lake. They have had over 500 arrests. They had a recent article in the New York Times, which is really great. We're finally breaking through to the mainstream media. But it's taken them 2 years to build this story up. And what's really wonderful about it is just today, I'm one of the Seneca Lake defenders, and we just got notification today that officially 112 cases were dismissed because the courts are getting so sick of seeing arrestees clog up the court system. So they have no other plan, they have no other choice but to dismiss these cases. And it's amazing. I'm luckily one of the people because they couldn't prove that I was actually trespassing. So it's great. You know, the system is breaking, and that's what's happening here. That's what we're witnessing. This is also additionally right near the Finger Lakes. This is right in Horseheads. You see these folks standing on a playground, right behind their baseball stadium, baseball field, and right behind there is where they're storing the chemicals to take to the fracking wells in Pennsylvania. It's absolutely disgusting. So let's look at the southern tier. This is where they're taking a lot of the waste that comes back from the drilling holes. This is actually being taken to waste facilities that can't handle the chemicals that are coming out of the drilling holes and everything. Our waste facilities, our water treatment plants are not equipped to deal with this stuff, and this is going right into our table water. It's a problem. This is not energy democracy. This is our friend Wayne, who, as a farmer, and the frack waste is actually being taken to waste facilities that are processing it, and the biosolids that come out of that, they're selling to farmers for fertilizer for food. This is not energy democracy. This isn't what we would choose. Central New York and Pennsylvania, we know, I don't know if many of you know about the Constitution pipeline and the Northeast Energy Direct pipeline, but these are two proposals right now that have a pretty big campaign to push against them right now, which is really wonderful to see. This is, you can see very clearly here where the Pennsylvania and the New York border meet, where the active drilling is taking place. Follow these dotted lines down, and just over the border is the Hollerins farm. These folks make their living off maple syrup. They're wonderful people that are just tapping trees, and the Constitution Pipeline Company thought it would be a really great idea to come in and chop down all of their trees just 2 weeks ago. Without having the permits to continue into New York. So these are the brutal capitalists that we're actually seeing. They have no logic except to continue their process to make money. This is what a right-of-way looks like, the Millennium Pipeline that's running east and west on the southern part of New York. And this is going right down into where this gentleman goes fly fishing. This is a problem. This is not energy democracy. If we move over into the Hudson Valley, there's folks, this is a group called Pause, and they're from Albany, and they're fighting not only the Pilgrim pipeline, which wants to carry crude oil from the Bucket Shale in North Dakota, but they also are fighting oil trains and oil barges that are going down the Hudson River to export in Linden, New Jersey. And then it brings us to closer to home in our metro area. Again, there is a local civil disobedience campaign going on right in our backyard, which I hope you all get active with, called Resist AIM. So we're fighting Spectra Energy, which is building the Algonquin Incremental Market 105 feet away from Indian Point Nuclear Facility. This is images of us getting arrested at the pipeline construction. And we don't just throw people out into getting arrested. We actually have very, very specific, deep trainings that people have to attend in order to participate in our civil disobedience campaign. We come up with community agreements, and we come up with roles for everybody. We want to make sure we're dealing with equipment and police and Spectra Energy and all these things. We want to make sure that everybody's safe and taken care of and feels secure, and we have a plan. And so we definitely are building Resist AIM to be a very, very safe, inclusive, and a really fun movement. Where we really need to start building up civil disobedience and not be so scary for everybody. And I think Resist AIM is doing a really good job. We have a bunch of teams that are headed by coordinators. There's many ways to participate in Resist AIM. If you're like, I can't get arrested, I just can't. Everybody has their own circumstances. Well, then maybe what you can do is help with the fundraising team or help with support. Bring coffee to the actions. We all need coffee because we usually start our actions at 6 a.m. So things like that. If you're a media person, there's ways to participate in helping to write press releases, helping on social media, things like that. There's plenty of ways to be involved in a direct action campaign. I just wanted to point out that this group, Sane, has been working on fighting the AIM pipeline for the last 2 years. They've taken all the administrative processes. They work on electoral, politics, and they take that route. So we're trying to figure out a way how we can sort of blend the civil disobedience campaign and their administrative and electoral campaign and complement each other's work. This is an image of what Spectra's plans are. So, they want to be able to segment these pipelines into little tiny projects so they can get them passed through with FERC. So they don't have to do cumulative impact, statements. They don't have to look at the complete environmental hazards that are going to happen to a giant pipeline. So they're taking it little bit by little bit just until they can get up to Canada and ship all this out overseas. So this is Resist AIM's first civil disobedience action in November. This is the Montrose 9. I'm one of the Montrose 9, and we stopped construction for an hour that day, which we felt was a really big deal. We prevented workers from going into a wear yard where then they deploy to their work sites. And that was sort of our launch, to say to the community, we say no. We then moved further into the right-of-way and blocked construction again. And what these two groups the first two groups of people, we've pled not guilty in court. What we're going to do is aim to plea with the climate necessity defense. So what our objective is that we are going to say that the actions that we took were preventing a much greater catastrophe than the law that we broke. And we have a super duper criminal defense attorney named Marty Stoller, who has probably represented many people in this room during some serious legal pickles. But he's an excellent lawyer, and we're taking this to court, and we've actually gotten national press attention for this pipeline, and this is the point of why we're doing this. We need people to start talking about it, like Governor Cuomo, who happens to have written to FERC, our Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and said, please halt the construction of the AIM pipeline because Indian Point happens to be leaking tritium right now, which just causes leukemia, and it's radioactive. And the AIM pipeline construction is just 105 feet away from this. So we need to stop it. And so we have Governor Cuomo on our side now, which is was a huge step forward for our strategic movement. And Spectra's response was, keep working, fellas, just keep going. And FERC's response was, we are going to deny your request to halt the pipeline. I just want to show you on a map where the AIM pipeline is. So that little U, right, you can see where Indian Point is. It's that red dot that the arrow is pointing to, and the AIM pipeline is directly under that. Here's a blow up of that. There is an existing pipeline there that was built in the 50s. The new pipelines that are being built now are 42 inches wide in diameter, 42 inches in diameter. These are 3 times more likely to explode, according to the pipeline and hazardous safety material. I mean, it's like actual agencies have told us these pipelines are more likely to explode. So putting that right next to Indian Point is absolutely unacceptable. Not energy democracy. Looking at what the potential impact radius is of an explosion, you can see all these little red dots. These are elementary schools. And our friends that are working in Resist AIM with us have kids going to these elementary schools. This is how close it is to Indian Point. You'll see at the top, Indian Point is right there. And when you see like that a pipeline blows up, it's not just the potential impact radius that Spectra and FERC say it is. We know that explosions take on much more. And it could be, you know, a complete meltdown for the New York City area of 20 million people. We really need to stop this pipeline. We have to remember that the AIM pipeline is not meant for the local market. It's meant to export. What they're doing is they're segmenting this project into what's called AIM right now, which is what we're currently fighting. And then they're going to add on to that pipeline called Atlantic Bridge. And then they're going to add on to that called Access Northeast. This is the beginning of Atlantic Bridge, and it hasn't even had its approvals yet, but they're working on that. This is what it looks like on the Hudson River up in Verplank. This is the Spectra pipeline. Look at how giant that pipeline is. This is what we have to stop. This is the maps that Spectra Energy puts on its website telling us where the pipeline, that they're actually illegally segmenting this project. So we have to remember that all these additional pipelines, these power plants, lead to liquefied natural gas ports that are off the coast, floating in the water off the coast of the United States and elsewhere all over globally, all over the world. This is a group, you might recognize some of the people in there, that made up some of the fighters of the Spectra pipeline in New York City that's going right into the West Village. This was, you know, some of our civil disobedience that we did. We were part of a group called Occupy the Pipeline, and the same as Resist, Aim, and Save. Occupy the Pipeline did the civil disobedience aspect of the fight, while Sane Energy Project did a lot of the legal fights, talked to a lot of the politicians and things, and we made awesome partners. And we still continue it because the Spectra pipeline is going right into the basement of the Whitney Museum of American Art, where it connects to the Con Edison network. So if you check out whitneypipeline.org, you can read all about that. So LNG. So we did have this proposal for something called Port Ambrose, right off the coast of New York City here. LNG, these are popping up all over the place, all over the world on our coasts. So LNG is we remember back that shale gas is 86% times worse for the climate than carbon. Okay, well LNG is even worse because it not only, you have to refrigerate it to negative 260 degrees in order to liquefy it, and then you have to transport it to wherever your market is. So that's adding on an additional 40% of what is worse making it even worse for the climate than just shale gas alone. So we really need to cut off these pipelines so the LNG can't actually happen, because this is like game over for our climate. We won. We vetoed Port Ambrose in December, okay? Like, we did it, okay? And it was about community engagement. It was about us strategically working out who are the decision makers and how can we jiggle them to get Port Ambrose vetoed, and we did it. So winning is possible. I just wanted to touch on briefly, Martha and Betta wanted me to go through what's actually happening in the States. Part of what I do is I work with art to help to organize people, and we made this giant banner, and I'll just run through what it says. It's the United States of Fracking. We're united with the Diné and Hopi, whose ancestral lands and ancient buildings are threatened by earthquakes. We're united by the pipelines and poisons, by the feeling that we're losing everything. We're united with Minnesota and Wisconsin, where frac sand mining fills the air with toxic silica dust. We're united with parents in Butler, PA, whose kids go to school next to frac waste containment ponds. With West Virginia, where waste is dumped right into the creeks that feed the rivers that supply drinking water. With 9/11 first responders who moved to Minisink to heal their lungs, only to find polluted by a compressor station. Port Ambrose, Cove Point, Coos Bay, where liquefied natural gas terminals are imposed through scamming our democracy and may explode. We're united with everyone who wants a safe, permanent job and a real home, not temporary employment residence in a man camp in the Dakotas. This is all very real. Oops. We're united with the heroes arrested for speaking out against fracking, and we're united with generations of those oppressed. And FERC is united with the oil and gas industry, and FERC is supposed to protect us, but they protect the industry. We're united with the stars that can no longer be seen because of blinding light from the gas flares. With the New York State, where explosive pipeline will pass dangerously close to Indian Point nuclear power plant. In California, where fracking continues in spite of the drought. But if we unite against oil and gas, we can be united by the air, the water, and the land we share. So these came from 50 phone calls that I had with people all over the United States to tell me their story. And then I worked with my favorite artist in the universe named Seth Tabachman, who's an amazing illustrator, to help me illustrate these stories. And what we did is we turned it into a giant 50-foot banner to use as a blockade at FERC. So this is a group called Beyond Extreme Energy. They're focused on fighting FERC for the movement. A lot of them are based around Washington, D.C. So we traced Seth's drawings and I brought it down to Washington, D.C., where we had the community paint it in and learn the story. So people felt much more tied to the banner because we actually joined together in communion to make this piece of art. And then we blockaded FERC with it, and they couldn't go to work because they walked in and they had to face all the stories of the people who FERC is endangering. And right in that place where Port Ambrose was vetoed, we have the opportunity to build offshore wind. We have a potential to build amazing power using our natural resources here in New York State. So I just want you guys to remember the way industry is seeing New York State and the way that we see New York State. And this is a real future that we can build. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.